Hello everyone and welcome back to the Yellow Card TCG channel. Toku here with a very special deck profile for you all today. I'm here to present my Max Rarity Eva deck profile. So Eva is very well placed in the current meta at the time of this recording. It has strong defensive options, very strong offensive lines. It has access to use a lot of the generics in the game that other decks don't have access to and can't make the best use out of, and that's why I decided to invest in Max Rarity Eva. I'm going to break this deck profile down into 4 parts for you all. Part 1 is going to be the raw deck profile as I go through the cards one by one with their ratios. Part 2 will be a deck commentary as I point out specific cards and their interaction with each other. Part 3 is the various ways that you can make lethal, short but sweet combo guide if you will. And part 4 will be the ideal hands and sample hands. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the deck together. Once again, now presenting my Max Rarity Eva deck profile. So we're going to start off with the pilots. We run 3 copies of the starter deck Shinji, which draws 1 on its summon. It has a secondary effect that we don't really care about, treat it as having the soul core on it. And then if you're brave to a spirit that's cost 7 or lower, it actually loses its symbol. So we really only care for the fact that it's Ikari Shinji named, has nerve trait, and draws 1 on summon. Next, we run 3 copies of Ikari Shinji, Synchro Rate Infinity. This one has draw 2 on summon. But most importantly, it has the flash effect that while it's braved, you can banish an Evangelion named card from hand to negate a currently active magic such as Burst Wall or Artemic Shield. We have 3 copies of Best Girl, Makinami Mari Illustrious. During your main step once per game, you can open the top 8 from your deck and add a Brave to hand and stack the rest on top in any order. Then if you added an Ikari Shinji, you can also core boost 2 to your unit 0-1, your Shogoki, or your Trash. It also treats the spirit it is brave to as 1 level higher and having 1 soul core on it for AT field purposes. Finishing off our line of Braves, we have 2 copies of Spear of Gaius. You can extra brave 1 copy of Spear of Gaius to a spirit that is currently brave to Shinji. This bypasses the 1 brave limit that the game imposes, but also that while you're brave to Unit 1 Shogoki, during the battle that it's attacking, your opponent cannot end the attack step. On to our Nexuses. We run 3 copies of Kensuke, which on deploy lets us summon or deploy an Ikari Shinji or Shikinami named card without paying the cost, and then we can draw 1 from its own effect. Also at the end step, at level 2, we can pay 1 from the Nexus itself to salvage an Ikari Shinji or a Shikinami named card back to our hand. We run 2 copies of the other bro, Toji. On deploy, similar to Kensuke, it lets us summon or deploy an Ikari Shinji or a Kensuke named card without cost to draw 1. It also has the flash effect during either player's attack step at level 2 to directly brave a Shinji from hand to a spirit. We have 2 copies of Gogoda Object, which as Mirage lets us discard a nerve traded purple card to draw 2. Or as a Nexus, once per turn during the main phase, we can salvage a Gendo, a Unit 13, a Spear of Longinus, or an additional impact back from trash. For the purpose of our deck, we only care about the Unit 13 recycling. Finally, we run 3 copies of Purple World. On deploy, you can draw 1. Simple enough. But it also has a soft floodgate effect during the opponent's attack step that checks as long as all of your Nexi are purple, which they are. When your opponent attacks with a spirit, you can shoot 1 of those cores from that spirit to the trash. It doesn't stack, so even if you have all 3 out on board, you only get to shoot 1. But that's not all. Purple World, when your opponent's spirit is destroyed or depleted, or if your opponent removes this from field through an effect, you can move the soul core back onto it from trash to rebirth it. This is Purple Evil Deity. When reborn or flipped, for every 2 primal purple only cards in the trash, you can shoot 1 core from an opposing spirit to trash. For the purposes of this deck, this never happens. It also has a non-stacking effect that when your purple only primal family spirit itself will be removed from the field by the opposing effect, you can randomly discard a card from their hand. For this deck, it only checks itself. We care for its other effect, Return to Prime, which states that when this would leave the field via opposing effects, we can actually reflip it, redeploy it as Purple World, paying the cost once again to get another draw, but maintaining that purple symbol on the board. Now with the Pilots, Braves, and Nexuses out of the way, onto the part that we all care about, and that's the Spirits, and more specifically, our Evas. Starting at the lower end, we run 3 copies of Unit 13, Memory World. On summon, draw a card, and by milling one from your deck, you can destroy an opponent's spirit with 1 or less core. Its level 3 effect is during the opponent's attack step, it can't be destroyed by BP comparison. We run 2 copies of Evangelion Mark 6, Spear of Cassius. This is an absolutely anti-social card. Before your opponent can resolve their on-summon or on-advent effect, by paying 1 to summon Mark 6 from hand, you can immediately negate the effect and fully deplete that spirit by sending all cores back to their reserve. Luckily, this effect is only once per game. Level 1, 2, 3, while attacking or blocking, it has AT field, which means that this spirit is unaffected by opposing effects except by those of spirits with the soul core on it. And at level 2 and 3, when it attacks or blocks, you can shoot 2 cores from an opponent's spirit to trash. Then we have one of the centerpieces of the deck, my very, very nice secret rares of Evangelion Unit 1 Shogoki Spear of Cassius. At all levels, when it attacks, we can draw 2 cards or fully deplete an opposing spirit. Also at all level, it has that AT field effect, which means it's unaffected by opposing effects while attacking or blocking unless it is an opposing spirit with the soul core on it. Finally, at level 2, 3, 4, when it attacks, you can banish an Evangelion named card from hand, and if you did, refresh the spirit and destroy an opposing spirit. Then our other win con, Evangelion Unit 13. Unfortunately, no secret rare art for this one, but another rule breaker in itself. At level 1, 2, and 3, you can brave up to 2 pilots and up to 2 exactly named Spear of Longinus to it. At level 2 and 3, on attack, you can shoot 2 cores from your opponent's spirits and reserve to trash, and when you send 2 cores of this effect, you can also exhaust 2 spirits. Finally, the level 3 effect. While braved and on attack, for each purple brave on the spirit, you can discard a random card from the opponent's hand. So, at maximum value, you can discard 4, but for our deck, we only brave up to 3. With our main deck completed, let's go over our defensive options. 2 copies of Harome. This is a burst that activates when your opponent resolves a summon or advent effect. You can summon Harome without paying the cost, and then you can destroy an opposing spirit with a when summon or advent effects. Does not have to be the one that triggered the burst. Then, if it's the opponent's turn, you end the turn. For the purpose of the deck, this burst effect is all that matters, being able to end your opponent's turn. Then we have 2 copies of Revival Burst Wall. Unaffected by any effects while in trash, and while in hand, it is also unaffected by opposing effects, and can be used without paying the cost when your life is reduced by the opponent. As a burst, its effect is after you lose life, you can heal 1 from the void, then by paying the cost, you can activate the flash effect, which is end the attack step at the end of that battle. So to explain the hand trap effect more, when you lose life, you can use the flash effect from hand for free, not the burst effect, because that's the burst effect as a burst. We also run 2 copies of Burst Flame. This is also unaffected in trash, so you can't recycle it, but also unaffected in hand by opposing effects, and similarly to Burst Wall, when we lose life because of our opponent, we can activate the flash effect without paying the cost. The burst effect, however, is after an opponent's spirit or ultimate attacks, you can destroy 3 12k or less spirits or ultimates and then pay the cost to activate the flash effect, which is to say, destroy an opposing brave spirit or ultimate, or destroy an opposing 20k or less spirit or ultimate. Finally, the last card. Bloodshed Blade. This is a white magic with the flash effect that your life cannot be reduced during this battle. but it also has a hand trap effect that when we lose life due to our opponent, we can activate its supremacy effect, or Hado, which is to bounce an opposing spirit back to the hand, and if successful, we can pay 2 to then rebirth this magic onto its spirit side. The spirit side is Mibrock Beragon Origin, with the effect that when reborn, end the attack step at the end of the battle. It also has the level 2-3 effect that at the beginning of your opponent's attack step, you can set a new burst from hand, but you can also spin an opposing spirit and ultimate to the deck bottom. For all intents and purposes, for our deck, we care about the fact that this ends the attack step. With all the cards introduced, let's go into the deck narrative. So Evangelion is what I want to call a draw and stall kind of deck. It uses its multitude of draw options, from our Nexuses to our Braves, to even Unit 01 itself, until we can make lethal. This allows us to draw into our many very free defensive options that activate in hand or as a burst. Whether or not you lean into the Unit 01 or the Unit 13 game plan depends on what your opponent is playing, what your hand is like, and how you've been setting up throughout early and mid game. I generally like to go for the 01 line, as even if I'm unable to win on that turn, I would have been able to replace and cycle through my deck to draw many cards and hopefully into more of the defensive pieces. And in a deck like Eva, which can present lethal turn after turn after turn, the best way to ensure that you can present lethal on your turn is to make it to the end of your opponent's turn. Evangelion is very well placed into the current meta because of the current format or era. As it is right now at the time of recording, the era is the contract era and plays around contract advents, which is paying the soul core to advent onto a stronger spirit. And because the soul core is moved from play for the current turn that your opponent advents, you can go wild with Unit 01 since it has AT field and would effectively become untouchable. Couple this with the narrative that many decks are very one-man army-esque. Our 2 bosses can handle other bosses very well. The AT field doubled in effectiveness when we learn that the defensive magics that have picked up in popularity to deal with some of the other major threats in the game makes Evangelion just that much better into the playing field. Finally, having 2 different lines of play makes you less predictable and makes your opponent second guess which defensives to play for as they scope their hand, letting you potentially catch them unprepared as you go for lethal. One of the major strengths of Evangelion is the abundance of free symbols. It isn't rare to expect to see the ability to go for game as early as turn 3, since your Nexuses can freely summon more symbols onto the board without paying the cost, and as your Pilot Braves have a level 1 upkeep of 0 cores, you can imagine how core efficient the early game can be, and it can give you many cores to play with in the upcoming turns. Let's talk about Best Girl Mari for a bit. One of the skill testing aspects of this deck is knowing how to stack your deck with Mari, based on how long or quickly your games expect to go. If you see the potential to go for a nonstop Unit 01 attack pattern, you want to be able to stack your deck to the point you will always draw an Evangelion named card to banish for cost to refresh with Shogoki. Or maybe you have more draw source in hand and you see more draw source in top 8 to stack your deck so you can draw into the draw sources, which can then draw you into the defensives to play towards the longer game where Unit 13 might be the strongest. On the topic of draw source, as previously mentioned, we have a lot of draw source between Kensuke, between Toji, Purple World, both of the Shinjis, Unit 01 itself, and that is why I thought it was okay to run 2 ofs in some of the slots. Golgoda Object, as Mirage, is also a draw source, but it has to discard nerve-traded cards. And in our deck, our nerve-traded cards are this Shinji, both of the Unit 13s, as well as Mark 6. This is also why I believe that running Kensuke at 3 rather than Toji at 3 is better, since Kensuke can use its second effect to recycle this Shinji, so we can always have a discard target for this Golgoda. Now that this piece of the puzzle has kind of solved our draw source in the deck, we also need to talk about how we deal with cores. Whereas most decks ramp cores through actually ramping cores from the void, Evangelion gets to pseudo core ramp because of all the free summons on the free symbols it gets to shit out. So this summoning this is effectively a +2 core for the turn, and this summoning this gets us another +2 cores for the turn, and with all the draw source we get and the fact that these can all be maintained with 0 cores, it is pseudo core ramp. The actual core ramping mechanic in the game is Mari, Unfortunately, she is once per game, which is fine because otherwise she would be broken as hell. So although we don't gain more cores than our opponent, we get to use more of our cores more efficiently, thanks to our Nexuses, thanks to our Braves that shit each other out for free. So A, not only do we artificially ramp mana by doing costless summons, B, we also have easy to maintain symbols on boards. Now a bit of a discussion on the offensive side of things. Between Infinite Shinji and Spear of Gaius, we have attack step ending effects cared for, such as Burst Wall, Artemic Shield, and Alex. And because Unit 01 has AT Field, we also have Removal cared for. The things to be careful for, however, are Spirit Hand Traps that can summon themselves out, which then on summon can move the Soul Core onto them and activate their on-summon effects to destroy our attacking spirit. These things are such as Judgment and Shin Ultraman. Some other things to be careful for when playing the deck is that Mark 6 is actually not an Evangelion named unit because its name is actually in English and capitalized. For the sake of Unit 01 and Shinji Infinity Synchro Rate, this is not an Evangelion named unit that you can banish for either of their effects. Unfortunately as well, Eva does not have the best Nexus care in the world. So things like Frozen Volcano will cook you, and things like Batiman will be incredible plussing engines for your opponent. Finally, some other options that I would love to consider for the deck. One card I will absolutely want to add to the deck is the magic. さあ、約束の時だ、碇シンジ君。今度こそ君だけは幸せにしてみせるよ。When using this card in the attack step, if my life is 3 or less, treat this card as cost 3, effectively costless with 3 reduction. The flash effect is during this turn, your life won't be reduced by attacks of spirits with 2 or less cores on them. And if you control any Ikari Shinji named Brave or Nexus, you core shoot every opposing spirit to reserve until only 1 core remains left on them. You can imagine that this effectively becomes don't lose life on the turn you activate this. But we also like this for the fact that the name of this card has Ikari Shinji in its name, allowing us to salvage our single copy multiple times through the use of Kensuke's end phase effect. Though the hard part will be finding the first copy, with our draw source and the fact that it is repeatable, I think adding a single copy is more than fine. Another card I considered adding is Overstar, which states that both players' lives cannot be reduced by more than 1 each turn, and both players cannot heal, which then lets us buy a lot of time until we can draw into our big bosses. Now importantly is the fact that we can pop our own Overstar by attacking with a hard summon cost 7 or more spirit, and it just so happens that both Unit 01 and Unit 13 are both at least cost 7. One last card that I have considered is Score Emperor. Score Emperor is a burst that activates when your opponent increases their hand through an effect, allowing me to gain cores equal to the number of cards they added. To reiterate, the deck has all of its draw source handled with, but outside of Mari, it has no real core ramping. So a couples of Score Emperor could go a long way to make up for that. Let's go to part 3. So part 3 is what I'll call counting to 5. And you can expect this in many of my future Battle Spirit deck profiles. One of the most important things I think when building a deck or learning a deck is knowing how it can deal 5 damage. Is it in 1 turn? Is it over 2 turns? For example, a 1-1-3 deck looks to deal 5 damage over 3 turns. 1 damage on the first turn, 1 damage on the second, and 3 on the third turn. A 1-4 deck would look to deal 1 damage and 4 damage. Evangelion is a 0-5 deck. Both of our win cons have the ability to smite our opponent off the face of the planet in 1 turn. The benefit of this is that you are not giving your opponent any extra cores to play with in the mid game by hitting their life, but the downside is in the unfortunate circumstance that you aren't able to make lethal and leave them with 1 life, you just gave them a bolus dose of cores to play with to try and kill you on the crackback. But yes, Evangelion's kill pattern is 0-5. Our first line to demonstrate is the Unit 01 Shogoki line. This can deal 6 damage over 3 attacks or 2 attacks depending on if you have the spear or not. Put simply enough, for the 3 attack pattern, you have Shogoki, Brave to Shinji Infinite, which will deal 2 damage each swing. Destroy a potential blocker, draw 2, and dig for Evangelion names to banish to continue attacking. This Brave pattern relies on you having an extra Evangelion name to banish from hand for Shinji's negation flash effect. But between AT field, multiple attacks, and Shinji's negation effect, this should be an easy way to make game. Another way is to use Mari instead. Maybe you don't have enough cores to get Shogoki to level 2 for the multi-attack. That's where Mari comes in. Her Brave skill lets you treat the spirit as a level higher, allowing you to act as a level 2 spirit. This is also a good meta call when playing against other purple decks that run Destament, a piercing purple magic that destroys spirits with 3 cores or more. And though this method does not have the ability to prevent attack step ending, it is able to play around certain effects such as Destament that can stop you such ways. Finally, the last way is to use Shinji plus Spear of Gaius, which will then become a triple symbol spirit to swing twice for 6 damage. This is technically the strongest version, as not only is there 1 less damage check timing for your opponent to potentially play through, but Spear of Gaius takes care of attack step ending effects, so you can save your Shinji negation for life protection effects such as Diamond Wall and the likes. Our other method of counting to 5 is with Unit 13. So Unit 13 lets us brave with 2 pilots, and if one of them is Shinji, we can then use Spear of Gaius to extra brave onto it as well. This then turns Unit 13 into a 5 symbol spirit. Unit 13 on attack is able to exhaust 2 spirits and also potentially deplete another, can take care of any potential blockers. And with its level 3 effect, you can also hand rip 3 cards since we have 3 purple Braves from your opponent's hand, which can maybe take care of potential disruptions, as the weak part about this line is that Unit 13 does not have AT field itself, so that makes it susceptible to interaction. So it's usually safest to go for this line when you have a Mark 6 in hand to negate any potential disruptive on summon advent effects, as well as an Evangelion named card that you can banish for Shinji's effect. The best way to brave in this pattern is with Mari, Shinji Infinite, and the Spear of Gaius. This way, if you're short on cores or playing around core removal, Mari can then bump Unit 13 up to level 3, which gets us our hand rip 3 that we so much desire. You can also do Shinji Spear, but what's most important is to have at least one of the Shinjis be the Shinji Infinite. This way you have the magic negation flash potential available to take care of life protection magic such as Diamond Wall. Now that we know how to count to 5, let's show off some sample hands and an ideal hand. So when going first with our only 4 cores, I like to sometimes either do a purple world and pass to have that soft floodgate for defensive purposes, or if I do have some of the boys in hand, I can also do Kensuke, effect to summon Shinji, which then lets me draw 1, then Shinji's effect let me draw 2. Then on our next turn, once we have more symbols to play with, we can start doing more things. Like, I don't think we have enough symbols to play this out yet. We definitely don't. So this might be another turn where we just do some more digging. So I can play a Toji here. Don't have a Kensuke, but I do have a Shinji. So we can go ahead and play Shinji for free. Toji then lets us draw 1. Shinji lets us draw 2. We drew into a burst that we can set, which can then skip our opponent's turn if they're not respecting it. Then we can also pay 2 from our purple symbols for our purple world. Maybe on our opponent's turn, they did not respect the burst and we get to open for Rome. This immediately ends their turn. And on to our next step, core step, draw step, refresh step. We now have all the purples in the world. And we also have Shogoki. So with this, we can then brave this to Shinji. If we wanted, we could keep Burst Wall in hand, or we could even set it so that way we can get a core boost. But with this, we can go into the attack step, attack with the 3 cores. We're now level 2, so we can draw 2, banish an Evangelion name to refresh. This will also destroy. We can go for another 2 draw, have another Evangelion named card to banish. Refresh, destroy, do it one more time. Banish this one. Refresh. And at this point, our opponent should be dead. So, as we said before, we did have a spear that we did draw a bit later, but like, let's say our opponent hit us for 2 life. That could have given us the 2 cores that we could then brave onto Gaius, which then this becomes on attack, heal 1 back, draw 2, banish 1, refresh, attack, heal 1, draw 2, banish 1 to refresh. Sometimes when our hand is insane, it is actually good to go second, because with that extra core, you can do so many more plays. For example, with this hand here, for 3, I can do Toji into Kensuke, Toji to draw 1, Kensuke's effect to summon Shinji to draw 1, Shinji's effect to draw 2, and then with our remaining 2 cores, we can then play Mari. With Mari's once per game effect, we can check our top 8. We can add a Shinji to hand, which then lets us core boost 2 to the trash. And then we can then stack our deck in whichever way we want. So for example, we see unit 13 here, but maybe we saw Shogoki somewhere else. So, because I see my win con up here, I'm going to put that on top. Then on our next turn, we can core step, draw into the win con we know is there, and because of the extra 2 cores that we got off of Mari and all the symbols we have here, we can then summon unit 13 for only 4 cores. And then we have our unit 13 ready to go. Maybe on last turn, like our opponent even did attack us, and then we also knew that we had a spear to draw. We could then pay the 2 to also brave the spear. And because of Mari, this is treated as level 3 already. And this can already swing for 5 symbols. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With the hand rip 3. So being able to go purple symbol, free purple, pay for this purple, know what's on top, draw into win con, get the extra cores, turbo accelerates our game pace so well. Now we'll do some sample hands and my thought process as I play through them, going either first or second, doesn't really matter. Okay, so our hand's pretty good. We have 2 draw sources with an Evangelion name, but we also have 2 defensive plays. So going first or second, I'm not really too concerned about. I would rather go first here just to be able to get the purple world out as soon as possible. So in this hand, I'll go first, draw into another Evangelion name. So I tend to actually want to keep these ones in hand as banish fodder for the Shinji or for the Shogoki. So we'll go purple world, paying 3. I tend to like using the soul core as cost when I play this purple world, because I know that if my opponent fumbles, I can actually recycle the soul core back to flip it. But most people don't, and at this point, either our opponent attacks, hits us for 1 life, or doesn't. Sometimes because of the purple world there, I actually don't get attacked, so that's very good. Gets to buy us another turn. Core step, draw step, and we found one of our various win cons. Now the problem with this hand is I actually have yet to find one of my pilots. So this will be another turn where I am forced to just do a draw. I do find one of the pilots here, and that's really good to see. This will cost 3 to play, and it will deplete my unit 13. I'm not super fond of that. So I think what I will do is I might set Burst Wall. I might set Burst Wall there, because when I do lose life, I can actually flip it open, gain the cores that I need to pay for it. I might deplete my unit 13 in the process, but I effectively gain a core because I lost a core from the life. So we'll pass on that, and maybe we can play a bit stronger next turn. So let's say our opponent actually does end up destroying our unit 13. The hit us for a life here, we can burst wall, gaining a life back, paying the cost, which is 4, to end the step. Then take our turn again, core step, draw step. Okay, looking a bit better. Still lacking a lot of our back row that we very much need. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to play Mari. I'll hard play the Mari for 4. And I'll use her effect. So the reason I'm doing Mari first rather than Unit 13 for the draw 1 is because I want to choose what I can draw into. I'm already 2 turns late, so I want to make sure that my next few draws accelerate my game state. I do find a Shinji. Ooh, and this is very nice to see. So I want to put these 2 on top, because I can draw one of these for turn. I could draw one of these this turn, draw him next turn, use him to play the Shinji I just added, to draw into our very many win cons. Now I don't see the Spear of Gaius, unfortunately, so I see that I could potentially do 4 damage with the Shinji Mari line. So I might actually play Unit 13 here to attack. And because maybe I want like the destruction to be able to flip Purple World over, I actually might put this on top and we'll do it like that. And because of Mari's effect, we'll gain 2 cores to the trash. So with our 3 cores left, what we can do, pay 2, draw, mill. Because we milled, we can kill something with 1 or less core on it, and hopefully because of Purple World that would have done something. Then we can flip Purple World over onto its demon side because an opponent's spirit has been destroyed. And with this we get 2 attackers. I would probably only attack with 1, or I only want to do 1 damage and leave them at 4 life. So let's say that this attack does go through, and then they attack us, and here we can do the burst wall from hand instead. So core step, draw step, and we drew into these 2. Refresh. I'm going to go ahead and swap these there, put our cores back, and in our main step we can now play the game. So I'm going to move our spirits up here, 2 cost, to play Kensuke to draw 1, to play Shinji to draw 1, and Shinji will draw us 2 cards. And with the abundance of cores we now have, Unit 13, 8 minus 5, 3 cores, straight to level 5 with you. Brave it to the Shinji, brave it to the Mari, and this becomes a 4 symbol spirit on attack to hand rip 2, core shoot 2, exhaust 2, and potentially this will go for the game, including the 1 damage that we did the turn prior. Let's go ahead and do another test hand. Okay, this is an interesting hand. So immediately off the get-go, I like what I see because I have a bunch of free symbols that replace themselves, but I also have a direction to lean into because I open Unit 13 again. With this, I can be happy to go either first or second. If I go second, I can pay 5 to summon the Shinji to draw 2. If I go first, I pay 4 to Shinji to draw 1. So let's say we go first again. We draw for turn, and now we have both of our various plans to go for. So depending on how many symbols we can spawn into the board, we can go for a very quick Shogoki turn or go for a Unit 13 turn. So, boom. Shinji, draw 1. And with this, we can pass. We drew a defensive. That's good to see. At this time, let's say our opponent does aggress us. We take a life. I'm okay with that. We don't have the cores for this, so we won't even worry about that. Core step, draw step, refresh. Okay. Now we are getting somewhere interesting. We drew Mari, which means I'm going to immediately Mari now. This is for the same reasons as last time. I want full knowledge of what's on top of my deck before committing to a draw. So Mari, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm already out 3 Shinji, so I'm worried I can't find one, but you know what? I do. And here I also find the missing spear, and I'm tempted by that. So I actually might go ahead and stack that on top. And I actually have a straight line of Evangelions to draw and banish for Shogoki. So I will be playing towards the Shogoki line of play here. I'm going to draw this turn. And for turn, I'll prefer to draw defensive. Potentially actually do the Golgo object. Then I can get another symbol on board or use it as Mirage to discard a nerf. That extra nerf to draw into 2. These two are not important. I will draw into them through the attack. So we'll do it like this. I'll draw this on one attack, draw this on the next. So we add that to hand, and I believe that I have already gained my cores. So with the 2 remaining cores, we'll play this Shinji and pass. Now what's important is, if I was at a lower life count, I probably would not have played the Shinji because I wanted the 2 cores to be able to play this. So let's say hypothetically our opponent actually tries to go for game this turn. They hit us for 3. So on the 3rd life, I'm going to declare Bloodshed Blade. I'm going to try and bounce one of their spirits, and if I'm successful, I can then pay 2, flip this into Mibrock, which will end the attack step on its rebirth. And like I said before, the best way for this deck to win is for your opponent to say end phase. So back to our step, core step, draw step, refresh. I have purple, 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 white. The white doesn't really matter too much, so I'm just gonna go ahead and play for 2 reduction Infinity Shinji to draw 2. Then, for purple reduction, we can play Spear of Cassius Shogoki. Brave it to a Shinji. Pay another 2 for the Spear of Gaius. And these have done their job, so I'm just going to stack them on the side like this. What else I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pop Mibrock into level 2, so I get its Floodgate effect on our opponent's turn. So, going to the attack step, I have 2 extra Evangelion names to banish for Shinji. I have Spear of Gaius, which says our opponent cannot end the attack step, and I have Shogoki at level 2, which means it's able to non-stop attack. So on attack, we'll actually heal 1 first. Then we're going to draw 2. We're going to banish an Evangelion name to refresh and destroy one of their spirits. At this point, we are blockable, but we are at a very hefty 24k. Normally unblockable unless our opponent is able to make some crazy numbers. Then that's 3 damage. We can go again. Heal 1 off of the spear. Draw 2 off of Cassius. Banish 1 to refresh and pop. And then maybe at this time, our opponent says, okay, Diamond Wall. I only lose 1 more life this turn. Here, we can then flash Shinji, banish an Evangelion name card from hand, and we can negate that Diamond Wall. And with this will be 3-3, and that's for game. Maybe I even have a way I said I don't take damage from this attack. In that case, we can actually hold on to this, because we still have 1 more attack, or more, depending on what we draw. So we can banish this, refresh, and maybe this time they Diamond Wall, in which case, banish 1 more to negate that, and this would have done game. And on to the conclusion. And with that, thank you for making it to the end of the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you all thought of the deck and if you appreciate the bling. Expect more to come from my side of things with Battle Spirit deck profiles, as I want to be able to make the Japanese side of the game more accessible as well. Please consider subscribing to the channel and connecting with us through the various channels, be it Twitch, Twitter, and Discord, and I will see you next time. Toku out.